Okay, everyone, we are recording. Wanted to say good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us for our latest installation of Tech Talk. My name's Keith Rue, and I'm the sales manager for Tech Systems. I'm joined by my colleagues David Andrews, our marketing and brand director, Steve Allen, our regional vice president for the Southern region, and Tim Brooks, our director of vendor management. We get asked a lot of questions from our clients about how we can keep them up to speed on the latest and greatest technology, and that's where the Tech Talk webinar series was born. We'll be hosting these webinars once a month with vendors that we believe are at the forefront of the security industry. But if you've got a product that you want to see, please don't wait on us to get them on the map. Go ahead and send me an email, reach out to your local account manager, and let us know about a product that you'd like to see. This webinar series is constantly evolving, and we'd like to get your feedback on what you'd like to see. As an added benefit, we will be recording all of these webinars, and you will be given access to the Tech Talk webpage as part of your registration, where we're going to be storing all of the episodes of Tech Talk. So this site, the Tech Talk site, is still under construction right now. But we do have a YouTube page that we can email out to everybody after the webinar is done, where you will have access to those recordings. So this morning, we have the pleasure of hosting Ryan Sheehy from Cisco Meraki. If you're anything like most people, and like me, you've been hearing about the cloud for quite a while now, but really you might not exactly know how that's going to translate to your video system or your security system. So Ryan's here to help us out with that and introduce you to the Cisco Meraki cloud platform. Ryan likes to say that, capturing video for a lens is easy and everybody can do that, but it's after that video is captured that Meraki starts to differentiate itself. They've got a wide variety of cameras and edge analytics, and they've got some deep integrations to peripheral systems like access control, single sign-on, and HR systems. So Meraki is really leading the way right now with their cloud security platform. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan in just a minute to tell us more about how Cisco Meraki can help us utilize our cameras for more than just surveillance. But before we get to that, real quick, just a little bit of housekeeping. Please make sure to mute your microphones during the presentation. If you have a question, you can see up at the top of your screen, there's a little icon for the chat. Click on the chat and type your question into the chat window. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that during the webinar, and I can, we may take a break here and there. I can feed a couple of questions to Ryan, and then certainly at the end, we'll be able to take questions and answer them. So please feel free to answer your questions. Just type them into the chat, and we'll go from there. So with that being said, Ryan, it's all yours.
Awesome, Keith. Thanks. Appreciate everyone hopping on today with me and allowing me to speak. My name's Ryan Sheehy. I am the Meraki IoT channel lead. So I focus on all of Meraki's camera and sensor portfolio as it relates to our partners and integrators like Tech Systems, Inc. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of the background of who Meraki is. Maybe you've heard of us, but you don't know exactly what we do. Talk about how we got into cameras, and then talk about all of really the cool things that we can do outside of just being a physical security device, how we can use that footage to do other things to drive the business forward. And so now take facilities and take physical security to not just being protecting the building, but also being a driver for the business going forward. So we'll get into it here. And if it looks like my screen's working, so go ahead and get to the slides. And we'll do a little demo as well, so you can kind of see what we actually see as an end customer, as an integrator, being able to see what that view looks like. So from a background perspective, Meraki actually started as a science project at MIT in 2006. It was a project called RoofNet, where guys stole Wi-Fi from one side of the MIT campus to the other side of the MIT campus. Mesh networking wasn't super profound, but what they were able to do was manage those devices without being anywhere near them. And that ended up becoming a business. Google funded them. They moved across the country. They started a startup in the mid 2000s, because what else are you going to do? And created Meraki. By 2012, Meraki, we had about 15,000 customers. We were a $120 million revenue company, mostly in the wireless and switching perspective, got acquired by Cisco. To date, it's the most successful acquisition by Cisco, at least that's my opinion, but also objectively, we went from a $120 million business to today about a $4.5 billion business within Cisco. And then from there, we've grown. So we've added on to other parts of the portfolio, adding MDM, adding SD-WAN and SASE, but also in 2016, late 2016, early 2017, adding IoT to the portfolio, starting with cameras. And today that portfolio has expanded as well. That is about a $150 million business unit within Meraki. And we are constantly growing, iterating, and really focusing on how we can take that to drive a better customer experience for our customers. Our mission statement that has really driven us over the past decade and a half is this: simplifying powerful technology to free passionate people to focus on their mission. Not everyone's a tech company. We are a tech company. Most people are not. You know, a manufacturer is focused on building the best goods that they can, providing workplace safety to provide the best outcomes for their customer. A healthcare provider is all about driving patient outcomes and a better patient experience. And technology is used to do that. But the more cumbersome and complex technology is to drive those missions, the more you have to focus on the technology and less on the mission. So for us, it's all about simplifying the technology so that way you can focus on your core mission and use our powerful technology to do that. And that story has really resonated. I mentioned, you know, we went from a $120 million revenue company up to about a $4.5 billion company. Today, we have over 700,000 customers on the Meraki platform. And one of the big stats that I like to highlight on here is that 4 nines cloud SLA. What that means is when you buy a license with our camera or with a wireless access point, you are expecting 4 nines uptime of the cloud UI for you. Obviously, you can't control ISP, you can't control last mile, you can't control any of those other things, but from a cloud uptime perspective, 4 nines. In order to do that with any on-premise system, whether we're talking about an on-premise NVR VMS camera system, whether we're talking about that with wireless LAN controllers and wireless access points, in order to do that, you're going to need multiple power supplies, you're going to need multiple power grids, you're going to need all kinds of crazy things of high redundancy and high failover and capability in order to maintain that uptime. And for us, you get that by just buying the license. And makes it really simple. You turn on the device, you plug it in, you apply the license, and boom, you've got 4 nines availability of our cloud UI. The other big piece on here is that we are constantly growing. This slide is probably out of date. I think we're up to almost 4.5 million customer networks. We are constantly seeing customers add and expand and grow with us as they continue to grow. They buy multiple products over time. They don't stop with one product because customers, when they come to Meraki, they see, wow, this is really simple. I'd like to get a simplified view of my wireless or my switching and my cameras and make and environmental sensors to simplify what's going on in the building. So we can provide all of those experiences, and we see that constantly growing. Also, another big call out is the APIs. That sounds pretty, vague in terms of like, why would you call that out? Well, because our platform is really powerful and has a lot of simplicity built in, but in order to maintain simplicity, we can't address everything in our UI and in our dashboards. We have to be able to extract that out to streamline deployments, to create custom computer vision models, to integrate to access control. We're not going to do all of that directly in the dashboard. Again, it won't be simple if we do that. And so by adding APIs, we're able to address a lot wider range of customer use cases. And so what do we make at Meraki? We make these widgets and gadgets on the bottom, right? Wireless, switching, cameras, SD-WAN, sensors. But A wireless radio is a wireless radio. A lens in a camera is a lens. There is really nothing different between the lens in our camera and the lens in XYZ vendor's camera. But what we do is create this Meraki platform that simplifies it. So as Keith mentioned, right, the lens capturing an image, nothing new there. But how we ingest that, how we can apply analytics, how we can use the Meraki dashboard to generate a simple user experience, better visibility, ease of management, better investigatory perspective, and using our APIs to streamline deployments, create custom computer vision models. And I'll show you some use cases there as we get into it. That platform strategy is really what we sell. I like to say this: we sell the sizzle. We absolutely are selling the sizzle. You get a great steak behind it. So we are going to give you that great user experience, that simple user experience, the flexibility to drive what your business needs are, and you're going to get some powerful hardware behind it. From a camera perspective, I'm going to leave you with the 3 S's. We want you to understand that we are scalable, we are secure, and we are smart. And then the agile access, which I don't know why marketing puts it before the S. I'm a big alliteration guy. We have the ability to access all of these capabilities from anywhere in the world, and with that agile access, however you want to consume it. So from a scalability perspective, what I mean when I say we are scalable or that we do everything different is we get rid of the NVR. When we record our video, we put that video directly on the camera itself. So every single camera has solid state storage. I think we're doing NVMe M.2 storage. We're not using cheap Micron SD cards that could fail at any given time. We're talking about high endurance, high read, high write capability directly on the camera. We do 256 gig. We can go all the way up to a terabyte. This allows customers to get 14 days, 30 days. I've seen customers with certain technologies turned on being able to get over 90 days of storage directly on the camera without an additional server. Why is that important to get rid of the server? A couple things. One, the server cost by itself is astounding. But what about the ongoing costs, the maintenance costs, the cost of maintaining that, the power and cooling costs? We actually talked to a large healthcare clinic provider out in California. They had 3,000 clinics, 3,000 NVRs. Each one of those NVRs is consuming $900 of power and cooling per year. Rough math, that's $2.7 million of power and cooling in 1 year for those 3,000 NVRs. Over 5 years, that's $13.5 million. Again, $13.5 million of just power and cooling costs for the NVRs. We get rid of that the second you switch over to a Meraki camera. So being able to scale that is really easy. The other piece is maybe I've deployed a camera and I've bought an NVR and I've sized it for everything to be able to deploy for 30 days of retention and for 30 cameras. But oops, the business wants to now extend this to 45 days of retention. Or they want to expand to 35 cameras. Now I have to go buy an additional server just to deploy 5 more cameras. For us, you add more storage as you add more cameras. And we make it very easy to do that. And then with the onboard storage, because we're not storing anything in the cloud, unless you want to, we can do cloud streaming and cloud archiving. What we are then doing is accessing those cameras via the cloud UI. So we can use a mobile app, we can use a web browser in order to access the video on that camera and then stream out. This also reduces the network intensivity of this deployment. If I stream everything to the cloud all the time, that is a lot of bandwidth on the network that will shut down my network, essentially. For us, if I'm not viewing the cameras, we're only sending up about 50 kilobits per second per camera of metadata up back to the cloud, and that's just management pane data. Also, we take privacy and security really at the forefront, so we do a lot of things to prevent anyone from just accessing that video footage. Our support, we will not access video footage unless you consent to us on a support call to do that. We also encrypt the video directly on the camera. So if that camera, for whatever reason, were to get stolen, good luck. I mean, they're going to need some crazy supercomputer that doesn't exist today in order to access that video footage. But again, privacy and security, I think this is our biggest differentiator in the entire space, all the way down to how we do hardware security. On each and every camera, we put a trusted anchor module, a separate piece of silicon away from the main processor, away from the rest of the circuitry. And all that hardware module is designed to do is to provide secure boot, validate the hardware, and validate the firmware. This allows us to have the most secure connection back to the Meraki cloud. Why would we make this big investment? Because a trusted anchor module in terms of cost of goods is not cheap to put into every single camera. Why would we make that investment? Well, if you saw that slide a little bit earlier, we have 12 million Meraki devices connected to our cloud. Those are servicing, I think, over 100 million end user devices as well. If any one of those 12 million Meraki devices becomes compromised, our entire cloud becomes compromised. We operate the world's largest network, essentially. Even though we're not managing end customer data, we're not managing network data, we're not managing your cameras, we are still accessing the firmware and deploying firmware out to these cameras, et cetera. We have the world's largest network, so we're not going to compromise that by allowing unsecure hardware touching our cloud. I'm going to get ahead of something. This is also why we will not do ONVIF. Our cameras are not ONVIF standard. We do not ingest ONVIF cameras into our cloud environment because we cannot validate an Axis camera without knowing what its firmware level is, knowing what its security patches are. We can't do that with a Hikvision or a Dahua or any of these other camera providers. We cannot validate that hardware. So we will not let it touch our cloud. That said, we can enable RTSP to be able to stream to outside devices. So we are not closed off. We can also use APIs. We can use MQTT. We can get the video footage out of our cameras to other devices. So if you decided today, I want to roll out Meraki, but you wanted a centralized device to aggregate, we can still stream to an NVR or to a Milestone or to some sort of cloud platform as you migrate over to the Meraki dashboard. The other big piece is here, we do secure user access. We are able to see who is touching what cameras, when they're touching the cameras. We can give policy-based access control. So maybe someone can only access site A and B, but not sites D and C. Maybe someone is able to see all of that, but not able to export. They can only get read-only access. We can also give people only access to camera footage, but not access to the rest of the network, and vice versa. We can give people access to all of the networking information, but not the camera information. So we can really segment this out based on what the user policies are for an end customer and provide that, and you guys can determine that with your own policies. Lastly, we are always up to date. We provide firmware through the dashboard. There is no way to download firmware from some website and then load that onto the camera. We are loading that firmware directly to the camera from our cloud dashboard. That makes it very secure. It also makes it very easy to update. We've talked to a lot of customers who are running Windows 2000, Windows CE and Windows 7, which, by the way, has been out of support for 4+ years, no security patches. That is, unfortunately, a hacker's dream, to be able to see those types of devices and get after them. For us, we can appease both cybersecurity and IT as well as physical security, because we can make it easy to set this up and deploy firmware and keep that network secure. A couple other bullet points that aren't listed on here. We are NDAA compliant. We don't manufacture anything in China, so all of these are NDAA compliant. We also don't do any password management, so it kind of goes into the secure user access and always up to date. Our password and our ability to get into the cameras is only via the dashboard. We only open up I think it's port 443 in order to get access out to the internet. Once that access is out to the internet, it's got that connection to the cloud, and that's it. There's no other ports that have to be opened up on the network. You just have to have that opened up, and there's no way to get into these cameras without a dashboard login. We can use SAML, SSO, multi-factor authentication. You could change your password every single day if you wanted to. Doing that across 1,000 cameras, probably not capable of doing that, but doing that for one login, you could absolutely do that. So we make being able to manage those passwords and update those passwords very easy. The last S is smarts. So we do a lot of analytics on the camera. Every single camera actually has a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor. That's the same processor, not in this, but in an Android phone, which allows us to do a lot of analytics. So we can do people counting, vehicle counting. We can do motion heat mapping, motion detection. We can use motion for searching and retention policies. We are also coming out with other new intelligent tools like being able to do threshold counting, ingress and egress traffic counting, people density counting in a specific area, and being able to provide those analytics directly in the dashboard. All of those analytics are run on the camera. We're not streaming that video back to a cloud instance to do the analysis. All of that is directly on the camera. We also work with ecosystem partners where, let's say you are a bottling company and you want to train a machine learning model to detect bottles, and you want to be able to classify this one is a green bottle versus this one is a clear bottle. You could train a custom computer vision model to detect those things. You could load that computer vision model directly onto the camera. Again, no servers involved at all. You could load that directly onto the camera, and now that camera no longer detects just people and vehicles. That camera now detects green versus brown bottles, or green versus clear bottles, or pallets that are stacked up in front of a loading dock bay. We can train computer vision models and load those directly onto the camera. Just more analytics that we do. And then lastly, that agile access. I mentioned it earlier, but we have an app for that. We can use a mobile app for security guards that are on the go, or a public resource officer, or whoever needs to be able to view that footage, a site manager, a branch manager. We can do that via a mobile app. We can use a web browser. We also have the ability to use Apple TVs, which is in the back here, with a Meraki application that does video walls directly on the display. So if you needed a remote display with a 16-tile video wall, you could consume that via an Apple TV as well. So all of this is basically however you want to use it, you can use it. All of that is available to you. From a use case perspective, I'm just going to highlight a few. This is a very large, about 600 location truck stop gas station across the Southeast. Many of you may be familiar with it. They wanted to use cameras for physical security, but as they started talking to marketing and retail operations and some of the other business lines of business within the organization, they found, well, we can do that. Loss prevention's a big one. Physical security is obviously important. But what if we implemented pay by plate at the pump? Now they are. Being able to push coupons out and be able to get more understanding of who's coming in and what they're doing at the facilities is something that they deployed. So I think they're deploying somewhere around 19,000 cameras across all of their sites. One of our largest deployments is actually in the UK that does rail. They're going to be deploying 250,000 cameras over the next 5 years. So we can absolutely scale to large, diverse deployments there. On here, big wholesale suppliers. So this is just kind of that warehouse and logistics use case, being able to scale across hundreds of locations across multiple countries, being able to get proactive protection for data closets, being able to put sensors into those data closets to detect temperature and humidity, water leak detection, being able to see air quality, indoor air quality, make sure that people are breathing in good air, or do we need to open up the dampeners to freshen up the air inside? All of those are use cases. And then in healthcare, we've got a large contingent of healthcare customers as well. This is just a very large healthcare provider for their ambulatory sites. They were looking to streamline operations across, I think, about 350 locations, and they wanted to implement that and integrate it with access control. So they partnered with one of our big access control vendor partners, which is Genea. to take over. I think they were running Linnell. They used Genea and flashed over Linnell and gave them cloud managed access control integrated with cloud managed video surveillance. So now they have a whole cloud managed environment for their ambulatory sites. We have others. We have large clinics. We have dialysis clinics. We have pharmacies, names that you've probably heard or seen on the corner somewhere. Being able to deploy these out to get better visibility into what's going on in the waiting rooms, what's going on in the retail side of the pharmacy. So all of those types of things we're doing there. And then from a sensors perspective, I kind of touched on it on the last couple of slides. I just want to hit it here. My formatting didn't come through, so I apologize, but these sensors that we build are really around smarter spaces, indoor spaces specifically. We want to turn any place into a smart space. We want to put sensors out there to get better context of what's going on inside the building. None of our sensors are IP rated, so they are not meant for outdoor use cases. If you're looking for temperature and humidity for outdoor in a rugged environment, not us. But if you are looking to understand what's going on in my facility, what temperature, what indoor air quality, are people smoking in the bathrooms? Probably not a use case in corporate environments, but that's something we talk about with some of our K-12 and higher ed customers. That said, being able to understand, is water leaking over my back of house inventory or over my data closets? Because if HVAC fails over my data closet, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars of an issue there that we can avoid with just a simple sensor that we deploy. And just from a lineup perspective, I kind of hit on all of them, but temperature and humidity, temperature probe sensor. If I've got a large freezer, I'm a food manufacturer and I need to keep things cold for my prepackaged meals, we can put a sensor outside the fridge and put a probe directly inside that fridge or freezer to be able to monitor the temperatures inside there. We are not NIST or USDA certified today. We are working on some NIST certifications for that temperature probe sensor, but we do see that being a big one. Water leak detection, being able to, again, see if HVAC is failing or flooding is happening and be able to remediate that issue ahead of time. Indoor air quality, door open and close sensor. Maybe there's a door that you don't want to wire a badge reader to. Don't blame you. That's a pain. But you do want to know if that door has been opened or closed. Or have been propped open and sending notifications or capturing a snapshot from a camera, we can deploy the MT20. All of these sensors connect back via Bluetooth, either to a Meraki wireless access point or to a Meraki camera. And so they will connect to ours. We can do something called Sensor Site, where we can capture snapshots tied to those events on the sensor. And then last but not least is the MT30, the smart button, which I always like to ask a customer this: if there was one process internally that you could streamline with the push of a button, that you wish you could streamline with the push of a button, what would that be? And this button absolutely does it. So we've deployed it in our office at the coffee bar. Push this if it's out of stock. We are talking to some healthcare providers to put it in the hospital rooms, not for like a panic or call button. You could do that. We don't call it a panic button. That's not really the use case we're going for, but possibly for nurses to push as they're wheeling the patient out. But this is not just to let facilities know to turn over the room. This also could send an SMS text to someone. This could integrate with an MQTT broker to tie into building automation or to a PLC automation. Because it's MQTT, it is sub-second latency. So we do have a pretty instantaneous push the button and action happens. We're also working with a large hospitality group that's putting these in their conference centers, in their conference rooms, in their hotels, so that instead of a user having to, okay, something's wrong with the conference room, I now have to walk to the front desk, explain it to them, have them come with me, then they call support, and then instead of that whole mess happening, I push the button, support calls me in the room because this button is associated with that specific room, and then we get to troubleshooting immediately. So improving that user experience in the hospitality space. So it's an ambiguous one. It's kind of the art of what's possible. It's entirely programmable and all API enabled. All of these sensors are API enabled though. So if I wanted to integrate this temperature and humidity sensor to my HVAC system, set thresholds, and if it goes above 75 degrees, turn on the HVAC. If it goes below 50, 65 degrees, turn on the heater. If I wanted to, if I'm detecting that my TVOC and particulate matter are getting too high in the facility to open up the dampener, we can absolutely do that with the MT14. In fact, we have lots of customers doing this today. So just wanted to touch on the sensors because this really kind of rounds out that whole IoT story and the value that facilities can bring. Just as a note, we've seen customers deploying this in their data centers specifically with a lot of success. A very large sales and marketing customer out in the UK deployed this across, they've got hundreds of thousands of square feet of data center space, and they saw a reduction in their power and cooling cost in their data centers by 44% by integrating the temperature and humidity sensors into their HVAC systems and creating a more streamlined operation. So just leave that there. This is a great way to improve sustainability efforts, reduce power consumption, go green, if you will, from a building perspective. And that's my presentation. I'm going to go to the demo, but before I do, Keith, was there anything that popped up in the chat there?
Brian just had one question pop up so far. It was, is any part of the Meraki cloud system housed overseas?
So we do have points of presence overseas, yes. We have US instances, we have overseas instances, we have a separate China cloud as well. Our support organizations are distributed across the US. We don't have anything for FedRAMP today because of that. So we are working on like a Fed cloud, if you will, for Meraki. But yes, we do have points of presence globally for our entire instance.
All right. Any other questions before we jump into Ryan's presentation?
Cool.
All right. Go for it.
So this is one of the dashboards. We have several different dashboards. I'm going to start here just so you can see kind of the main dashboard. This is the original Meraki dashboard that has all of our wireless switching, network-wide information, as well as our cameras and sensors. So if I'm an IT administrator and I want to know what's going on my network, this is a great view to use. I can go into my cameras as well. Again, I could set policies that prevent an IT administrator from getting into this, but let's just say we don't want to for today. We want to let them have visibility. I could go into any camera. By the way, I can see all of my cameras live and which ones are online, which ones are throwing alerts, or which ones are offline or dormant from this simple view. By the way, the only way, all you have to do to get this view is plug the camera in and turn it on and apply a license. And then boom, you have this view of what cameras are online. So you don't have to go and configure any special software. You don't have to SSH into any specific device. There's no gateway device that you have to deploy. This is camera analytics coming over via the cloud and being able to see all of this information live. I'm in Central Texas. I didn't say that earlier, but that's where I'm at. And I am looking at cameras in San Francisco, halfway across the country. So I can come into any one of these cameras. I'm going to go to the stairwell just because there typically ends up being some people. It is a little early in San Francisco, 7:30. So we know how some Californians get started a little later. They are not likely to be in right now, but we can get into the camera. So as you see, I can see all this information. We've actually blocked off specific areas. These are privacy windows, so you can set up privacy windows for sensitive areas that you don't want to record information. Hey, I did see someone. Fantastic. Maybe I shouldn't rag on California so much. But in here, I can see a timeline of all the events. I can see all the motion events captured on here, so I don't actually have to go rewind and see if there was motion events. I can see exactly when they were. If you actually take a look at that, oops. Me a second here. Go live. And let me do a motion search. This will demo it a little bit better. Maybe someone slipped and fell on here on this platform earlier today or yesterday. I can actually zoom in, create a motion search view, and single that area out. And then I can see all of the different motion events that happened that were associated with that. I actually went a little wider, so that didn't really give me the view I'm looking for. I just want to do right here. That's it. And I can see all the times where there was motion here. If you actually see this, this is a thumbnail. I don't have to watch this 14-second video. I can see this exact clip of this person walking down the stairs. Yep, it was the guy in the green jacket with the backpack. He slipped and fell. All right, great. I can export directly from here. If this wasn't, I just saved myself 14 seconds, 15 seconds by being able to say, nope, that's not the guy, on to the next image. We call this motion recap. This is actually Meraki intellectual property. So we have the ability to consolidate that video down to a single image and give you that context of what was going on. I can set parameters, sensitivity. It needs to be over 15 seconds. And create that view that's more aligned with what you're looking for, specific to a motion event. All of our analytics on the camera, I can see all the people counting. I can get motion heat maps. Where's my motion been, and what times a day were we seeing motion in those areas? I can see networking information, location information. But I really want to talk about this. So we can come in here and use advanced settings. So maybe I want to enable RTSP. It really is as simple as clicking enable RTSP. It'll generate a URL. I don't have permissions because I don't have the role-based access control to make any changes on this network for obvious reasons. I'm a sales guy. I shouldn't be trusted with managing our camera system in our San Francisco office. But when I enable it, all I do is I get a URL that I copy and I can paste into wherever my RTSP stream needs to go. If I want to set quality and retention policies, I'm going to disable this, and I'll explain here in a second why. On the camera, this is just basic 256 gigs. Let me make sure. 256 gigs of storage on this device. So if I'm doing 1080p, 24 frames per second, I can get 17 days of retention, 35 days of retention if I'm doing 15 frames per second, 50 days of retention, 8 frames per second. If I want to go back to the mid 90s, most customers don't, but let's just say I do, I can get 90 plus days of retention, even with 15 frames per second, over 70 days of retention. Now, this is great, and it's a really good way of doing things, but I'm going to also say, what if we wanted to do motion-based retention? Most CCTV is record on motion. Or buy a really massive box so I can get 30 days because I don't trust the record on motion feature. So for us, what we're actually going to do is record 24/7. But after 3 days, I will delete all the footage in which there was no motion detected. So you still get 3 days. If there's an incident, which you're probably going to know about in 3 days, you're going to be able to go back and still be able to view 24/7 video, get the context, be able to export the clips, and get it out of the dashboard for saving for whatever need you need in the future. But let's just say there's a bunch of wasted space because 99% of video footage goes unwatched. That is a stat that I think IDC found when they were doing some of their analysis on video surveillance. What if I deleted all the unwatched, unneeded, unnecessary video footage? So that is what motion-based retention does. And when I come down here on 1080p at 15 frames per second, we have now gone from 35 days of retention to almost 80 days of retention. And that is based on the trailing 7 days of activity. So as you can see, we had 13 hours of motion, 14 hours of motion. On the weekends, that goes down to about 2 hours of motion. And if we go up to high 24 frames per second, we're still over that typical 30-day threshold requirement. If I need more, we can do cloud archive licensing. In addition, we only need to license the cameras that you want to license. We don't have to license every camera with cloud. But let's say you have a 180-day retention policy or a 365-day retention policy. We can use cloud archival to archive outside of the camera itself. That also gives you dual copies, so we'll still record on the camera and we will stream to the cloud and archive to the cloud. So for any cameras where you must have dual copies, fantastic. That is absolutely available to you. So I wanted to highlight that because it does show the power of what we can do from a motion analytics perspective. It also shows, hey, you don't need a server to get 30 days of retention. Heck, I was able to get you 30 days of retention without turning on motion-based retention, but now I can do it at a much grander scale, getting you almost 80 days of retention. There's some cameras in here where it's in our bike room or something like that, where we're getting 3 or 4 hours of motion a day. And that is getting well over 120 days of retention in those specific areas. So lower motion areas, obviously you're going to get more retention because we're deleting more footage. than in high traffic areas. This will also be less effective in outdoor cameras because you've got bugs, variance of light, cars driving around, all those other things that can affect it. So just know that you might see a little bit less capability on that in outdoor cameras than you would in indoor, but it's still going to give you some benefit as well in outdoor cameras. We can also set up motion alerts. So if you wanted to set up a motion alert where there was people detected in accordance with that motion alert, we can set up those alerts. We can pull them out via webhooks. We can set up SMS texting. Again, I don't have the view where I can show you all of that because I am not a super admin on this account, but we can do alerts on people detection as well. Last things before I show you the real view, the investigatory view, I want to just show you a couple things on video access. So for here, I can go in and see the video access logs for every single camera and when they've been touched, by who they've been touched, where in the world they touched it from. As you can see, here I am with my SSO. I am not in San Jose, but I am VPN'd in, so that is why it shows me in San Jose. It's also got me on an IPv6 IP address, but I can see exactly how I viewed it. I viewed it through cloud access. I viewed this specific camera and this specific camera. This was the SSO login. So I can get a lot of information and details around who's touching what cameras and when. Same thing for external streams. So if I'm enabling RTSP or streaming to some sort of device external to this dashboard, I can get some information there. And then setting up policies and setting up administrative roles is very simple. I come into this and I can set those role-based access controls to there. So I can set people up by network. I can give them device tags that they can access specific tag cameras. Maybe someone only needs access to all the front doors across all of my sites. I could set up a tag that says this is a front door, apply that tag across multiple cameras, and boom, you're good to go. And then likewise, I can see only live footage. This is the level of view that I have versus being able to view and export any footage at all. If I come into here, this is what we call Meraki Vision Portal. So Meraki Vision Portal is that camera administrator view. This is the ability to do investigations, very simple. This dashboard's great, but it kind of sucks if I'm a camera user. If I'm a security guard, if I'm a director of security, that's got a lot of noise, a lot of stuff that you just don't need on a day-to-day basis. If I want to conduct an investigation, I just need something really simple to use. And I'm going to minimize this, it's in the way. So I can come into here and do all of those same things that I showed you. I can do motion searching. I can view across cameras. I can set up video walls. I can see all of my cameras on a floor plan. And I can see which cameras are online. I can see which ones are offline. I can, that'd be red is offline, green is online, the blue is the camera that I'm viewing. So I can get a lot of context on the floor plan of what these cameras are doing and how they're performing. Again, I can go into video walls. This camera specifically is our MV93. So we have outdoor and indoor fisheye cameras. But I think the coolest part about that is the ability to digitally pan, tilt, zoom, and dewarp. So all I did was zoom in. And with zooming in now, I can pivot this around, but the camera is still recording the full 360-degree view. And this is retroactive. So if I go back to, of course, no video available because the demo. If I go back, let's see if I can get to where it's like darker maybe. There we go. So we're in black and white mode, infrared mode. I can go back in time and still do all the digital pan, tilt, zoom capabilities that I just showed you. So this is retroactive. And again, the camera's recording it all the time. And I could set up a video wall with it facing north, south, east, and west, and be able to have kind of a multi-sensor like view without having four cameras. Oh, that's cool. That's just switched. If I go into video walls, I can search and do motion video search across all of these cameras. I can actually set up multi-network video walls. So if I wanted to do, again, a video wall across all of the front doors, I could set up front door 1, front door 2, etc., all the way up to 16. We max out at 16 video tiles on a video wall. However, you could open up multiple browser tabs and have multiple video walls open. I don't know, I know I, with my ADHD, would not be able to manage 4 16-tile video walls by any means. But if you had a command center where you must have 64-tile video walls, there is a way for you to do that with multiple browsers. We also are just about to launch something called event search. So if I want to search for people across motion, across multiple cameras, I can do that and make it really simple. This is still beta, so it's probably not super perfect just yet, but we are going to be launching this live here in a few weeks as out of beta. But if I wanted to, then I can get a better thumbnail view of all the motion detected across those cameras that I selected, in that viewpoint. So making it even easier to do investigations. I can also see if there's only vehicles detected as well as people detected and get more granular on that. From an exports perspective, get rid of that. From an exports perspective, it is very simple. If I want to export across multiple cameras, let me just go to this bike room video wall. I can actually export off of every single camera in this video wall. So I've got 7 videos, video tiles on here. I could actually do this, get rid of that. I can export all. And then of course I don't have permissions to export, but you get the idea. I could actually export across all of these cameras in one shot, a couple clicks of the button, and that's it. If I come into a specific export, I can actually view some more information about that export. If I get rid of these, I can view the information about this export, including the MP4 file name. I can share it as a shareable link. I could actually download it as an MP4 and share it out. So I don't need an MIT degree to watch my exports anymore. I can just download it as an MP4. I can also see my SHA checksum watermarking and copy that and export it for chain of custody and this allows it to be viable in a court of law. So we have that SHA checksum in order to be able to do that. I've already talked about the dashboard, and this is more dashboard. This is in our Cisco store in San Jose. But the other thing I want to talk about real quick, because I know we're running up on time, is our ecosystem. So again, I mentioned what we can do on the camera with that simple dashboard is fantastic, but what if I want to do more? What if I want to have next gen footfall analytics? What if I want to integrate to access control? What if I want to have custom computer vision and be able to understand more ways that I can improve operations or get face mask detection, or forget face mask, any type of PPE? Are people wearing their hard hats? Are people wearing their bright colored vests? Are people wearing their level of badge that they need to be wearing? We can use some of our ecosystem partners to train these models, work with you, develop the outcome that you're trying to drive, load these directly onto the camera. So we have that capability. A big one would be like Cogniac. They do a lot in manufacturing and healthcare. They're actually working with us on a large logistics provider to classify and sort the different types and quantities of trucks coming in and out of their warehouse facilities. They have to do that for environmental regulations in California. So we're able to work with Cogniac to do that rather than hiring full-time equivalents to go count trucks all day. So we can leverage them. Likewise, if you wanted to build your own stuff, we have our own developer hub, and all of our APIs are open API. We can come into these and get all of the documentation for these cameras to build whatever it is that you want to build. So these are more for being able to capture snapshots or take a live link out of the dashboard, or again, do things like custom computer vision or take API information from analytics or MQTT data perspective outside of the camera. We can do that with MVSense. Also, if I wanted to treat this device and streamline its operations, maybe I need to change configuration of resolution and video quality, and I want to do that across 1,000 cameras at once. It really is as simple as writing the script to do that. Take the API chain, take your configs that you want to change, and then run it. So all of that information is available here. We have code exchange. We have all kinds of fun goodies for people to go play around with and scale. And I mean, this is a reason why we're getting into some of the largest organizations in the world. We've got reference customers. Actually, I don't even have to like say them out loud. I can pull up our main dashboard here, and you can see some of the names that show up. Possibly, maybe not. Yeah, there we go. We've got some large names that are, and these are just a few that are deploying us across all of their sites. I know Hilton is another one that is okay with us name dropping them. So we're able to do that. And yes, every green dot on here is a Meraki network. And I mentioned we were 4 million on that slide. It is now almost 4.25 million networks online. So as a call to action, just one thing that you should note too is if this was interesting to you and you want to go deeper, because I only scratched the surface, there's a lot more that this technology can do. There's a lot more features and functionalities that our account teams would love to work with you and Tech Systems on to show you. But the other thing I would encourage you to do is try us out. We are a big fan of trial equipment, going out to customers, you getting hands-on with this, seeing how easy it is to deploy, enable yourself and educate yourself with camera in hand. As a call to action, I would say, hey, come talk to our account managers. Let's go a little bit deeper and wider on things that you're interested in. And then as a follow-up to that, let's get you some gear to test out. Maybe there's a site that you want to try it out with. Maybe you just want to deploy it and see how fast you can get a camera online. And start functioning. We can get you a trial unit out. So wanted to leave you with that. And with that, thank you. I appreciate all the time today. I didn't see any other questions. Keith, was there anything else out there?
Yep, we had a couple other questions come in. So we answered the question about it overseas. Are you able to put this system in an elevator?
I don't see why you couldn't.
As long as you get a network cable to it, you should be able to, right?
Yeah, we are network cable. We also can do Wi-Fi on these cameras, but that actually probably wouldn't work at all in an elevator, given it's a giant metal box. But yeah, there shouldn't be any real issues putting it inside of an elevator. And if you need like a special mount or an enclosure, we work with a lot of different providers that can get you the enclosure you need for that use case.
Okay. Just kind of on that topic, any other specific network requirements for it? You work with other networks other than Meraki. You can put it on different switches. Any specific PoE requirements or anything like that?
We're 30 watts, so as long as it can pump 30 watts out to the device, you're good. AT, BT, PoE is fine. We work on any type of provider. So if it's Cisco, Meraki, Aruba, all of those fun things, we work on all of them. You will get some added benefits if it is Meraki, which is we can actually see a topological view of the network, including the camera on the network. So there's some fun things there. But outside of that, you don't really lose a whole lot. So we work on any other networking provider. And then, like I said, open up port 443 and it works. It just needs access out to the internet, and that camera phones home immediately to the cloud, and you can start touching and playing and feeling it. You can actually provision the camera the second you get the license key and the camera itself. So it doesn't even have to be in your office in order to start provisioning it. You can start getting those configurations set up now. And then once you plug it in, it downloads that profile, and it's got all of the things that you wanted it on already. So we call that zero-touch provisioning.
Well, and I wanted to touch on something else you said there, Ryan, about it just needs to touch the internet. I think that's a big advantage. We don't have to have corporate network in this building to be able to touch a proprietary NVR or something like that. As long as you can touch the internet, you can get to the Meraki cloud.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Let me see here.
I see.
Can you set them up for audio recording?
We do one-way audio ingest, so we can do audio in. A lot of states do require two-party consent, so obviously we see a lot of customers not enabling audio, but most of our cameras have audio. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head don't, but most of our cameras do. I think our bullet camera does not, for example, but that's because it's designed for
sealed.
Yeah, it's designed for like super long range, high placements, etc. We also, though, can do something called audio analytics. So maybe it is a two-party consent state, but you want to know if the camera's detecting a fire alarm or if the camera's detecting a siren.
Loud noise, things like that.
We can actually do that and pick up those external sounds and use the audio still to function for analytics perspectives.
Okay. Can you do facial recognition?
No. So it's a great question. One hard stance that you will see Meraki absolutely take is we will never do facial recognition. There's a lot of reasons why. One of our biggest competitors was actually founded by former Merakians. They predicated themselves on facial recognition, and then whoops, they started seeing employees internally using that to sexually harass other employees. So we see it as more of a downfall to the industry than it is a benefit to the industry. Also, good accuracy on facial recognition is like 90%. So if you're trying to use it for some sort of use case and you're only 90% accurate, that's scary and dangerous if you're trying to rely on it. So we will never, and I can say that pretty firmly, we will never do that. That said, we will not stop a customer from working with an analytics provider that does facial recognition. It's your camera. So if you wanted to do it, we can't stop you.
Send them the feed and then, okay, got it.
Yep.
Okay. I think that is it. So folks, just in closing, want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today to talk with Cisco Meraki. Those of you who know us at Tech Systems, you know that our focus philosophy, guarantees response times and fixes for your security system. But it's not just about getting your security system fixed. It's also about being able to help you evolve that security system as the environment changes. So we hope that this presentation and future presentations will help educate you on those newest options that are out there. As a reminder, I mentioned at the beginning, this session has been recorded. Give us a few days to get this edited and reformatted, and we'll be posting that up on our YouTube page. If you have any questions, you can always email me and I can send you a link to that directly. So with that being said, thanks again to everybody. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar in late April, early May, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate the time, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.